Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Vetrepreneur Franchise Workshop. I'm Rachel Pitts, Marine Corps spouse and franchise coach. We're very excited to have you all here. This is an amazing opportunity for veterans because it's the perfect hybrid between working for a company, but also starting your own business, not starting your own business from scratch. So you may not already know, but 1 in 7 franchise owners is a veteran, which is just a testament to their fortitude, work ethic, and ability to follow procedures. This workshop is put on by GI Jobs, and we at GI Jobs provide coaching services at no cost. As a franchise coach, we help educate and support you during the process of finding business that's best suited for you. And this can be a really daunting experience to go at it all alone, so our support will help walk you through the entire process. All right, let's take a look at today's agenda. So coming up, we have our Vet Speak portion, where you'll hear directly from a veteran franchisee as he shares his experiences and advice. And then after that, you'll get a rundown on the basics from our franchising, from our franchise boot camp. And the boot camp will cover commonly used terms, the franchise disclosure document, the 5 myths of franchising, 10 steps of franchising, as well as financing. And then at the conclusion of the boot camp is when we'll provide a link for you to register to be connected with a franchise coach that's best suited for you. Generally speaking, if you're thinking about opening a franchise in the next 6 months, you'll need a minimum credit score of 680 and $20,000 liquid capital to invest, as well as $50,000 net worth. That means you'd be ready for an introductory call with a coach. All right. So with that, we'd like to hear from you guys. So we're going to have a couple of poll questions. You can scan that QR code, and it should take you to the poll. Yeah, slido.com. There we go. Scan that. And the first question should be, what branch did you serve in? So I'm a little partial to the Marine Corps. You know, my father is a retired Marine, my brother's a Marine, my husband's a Marine. So let's see what we got here. Oh, Air Force. Okay. Army. What Army? Come on, Marine Corps. Small but mighty. Any military spouses in the house? No. All right, looking like we have mostly Army, pretty even across the board though. I'm representing. I'm actually stationed at an Army base now. A lot nicer than the Marine Corps bases, I'll tell you that. All right. I think we can go ahead and move on. Oh, we still have people coming in. Sure. All right. Let's move on to what excites you most about owning and operating your own business. So this is an open text field. You can just type in a word, a short phrase. What excites you most about owning and operating your very own business? Freedom. Yes, America. Independence, flexibility, being your own boss. I get that. It's like freedom is a real big one. It's just growing. Wow. Financial independence, being your own boss. Oh, these are great. Empowerment, your own schedule. Yeah, that's really important too. Own time, passion, I like that. Work-life balance, that's huge. Pleasing customers, really great. Legacy, that's definitely important. Family business. Great answers, everyone. The challenge, of course. All right. Upward mobility, providing service, very cool. Okay, these are amazing, guys. I really appreciate that. I think we're going to move on to the next one. So what is your biggest obstacle to owning and operating your own franchise? What do you view as standing in your way that you need to overcome to own and operate your franchise? Money, yep. Knowledge, for sure. Liquidity, the risk, yep. Just starting, yeah. Sometimes just that first step. No guidance or path. Yeah, and like I said earlier, this is just the perfect opportunity because it's almost like you're getting a business in a box. It's already put together. All of the procedures are there for you. So that does reduce the risk and the starting up. Taxes. Yeah, I think we're all a little scared of taxes this time of year. All right, these are really good. Faith in colleagues. Okay. You definitely have to have strong partnerships. All right. Really good answers, everybody. So that's a great insight into what you're excited about and what you need to overcome to get started. So now I would like to introduce our speakers for the Vet Speak portion. We have Rob Young here to give us some insight into the franchise. In just a few years of owning his G-Force business, Rob has been Rookie of the Year and Franchisee of the Year, and he's also in the running for first place in sales for 2022. So successful, to say the least. And then leading our Vet Speak conversation will be Chris Hill. He's the co-founder and CEO of GI Jobs and a true Vetrepreneur. He'll also be leading our boot camp and is one of our senior franchise coaches. All right, I'll hand it over to you, gentlemen.
Rachel, thank you so much. We are super excited to have everybody here. It is a packed house this afternoon. We're maxed out at our 500 attendees. And then we've got a lot of other people watching on LinkedIn and on Facebook Live. So thank you for all of the interest you've got. Super excited to talk about franchising. Like Rachel said, is the perfect hybrid. We talk to so many veterans that are interested in starting their own business, but they're like, I don't have a great idea for it. I don't know what kind of a business to start, or I don't have any business experience. And franchising is the perfect fit for people like that. If you've got the desire, got the ambition, willing to take on a little bit of risk and want to know what the right formula is, that's exactly what franchising provides. So this is one of my favorite portions of this whole afternoon is the Vet Speak portion. We get to talk to franchisees and hear really from them exactly what their journey path was like to owning and operating their own business and what kind of challenges they faced, how they overcame those, and what's the most rewarding part. So we'll get into all that with Rob here in a second. I just want to start off too, if you've got any questions, we're going to take the last maybe 5 minutes or so and take questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them into the chat. If you're watching live on Zoom, go ahead and put it into the Zoom chat. If you're watching on social media, go ahead and put it into the chat there, and we will get to as many questions as we can at the conclusion of this portion. So anyway, without any further ado, Rob, welcome. Great to yeah, man, you're in rural Alabama. You're a Navy vet 4 years, and I think Army Reserve 2 years, and you run a G-Force franchise.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about your journey path from when you got out of the service and what your career path looked like until you got into franchising.
Man, I did so much stuff. I got out. I thought, hey, I'm gonna take advantage of the GI Bill. Well, you know how that goes. You're older than everybody there, and you're like, I don't know about all this. So then I went out and I sold cars for a while. I've sold insurance. Then I finally landed with a government job, working for Anniston Army Depot, rebuilding tracked vehicles. I was in one of the engine shops as a machinist, and spent a lot of time doing that. It's rewarding work. It was a good job. We're taking care of the warfighter still. Even as a vet civilian, I was able to do that. So that was very rewarding.
Yeah. No, that's cool. And then how did you get into franchising from there? I mean, what was your how did you hear about it? And what was that process like for you?
Well, Veterans Day of 2018, I was watching TV and Jack Child, our founder, was on Fox and Friends doing a veteran-owned business segment. And I was pretty happy where I was at. I had a good job, but I wasn't completely happy. So a few months later, I called Jack up and talked to him about it. And whoever thought about putting paint on the ground? I sure didn't, and sure didn't think about franchising. It was a little bit different for me because, I did own another business where I have some rental houses. So I had a little bit of a business background as well. And that's kind of what interested me, but I am at a disadvantage in that I'm in rural Alabama, and how you going to make a living striping parking lots in rural Alabama? Well, the G4 system allows you to do that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting too, because, Rachel talked about some of the things that you've accomplished and you've been a G-Force franchisee for 3.5 years, but some of the really, incredible performance that you've had being in a really, really small regional wise. How does that work? I mean, how do you compete against some of the bigger markets?
I use the resources that not only G-Force gives me, but we have some other resources as well where we're able to go out and bid on jobs with other people. And I kind of had to go that route because I'm in a smaller market and find a way to bid on jobs with contractors that were bidding on them. So I sent out blind quotes to everybody, every DC I could find that was bidding on any job I wanted. I sent them a quote blindly. And they finally got to where they knew my name and would call me directly for quotes. And then I ended up with a paving company, and they give me a ton of work.
Yeah. So that process of getting into franchising for you, we talk to veterans all the time that, there's lots of reasons why you shouldn't do it, right? It's risky. And,
that's right.
It's my family isn't on board, or my kids are too young, or I have, I've got good job security, or the economy's not where it needs to be, or we've got labor challenges right now. That's one we hear quite a bit right now. How do I find people to actually work in the franchise? So these are all challenges, of course. You experienced some of those. What were some of the things that, in figuring out if you wanted to get into franchising, what were some of your biggest challenges and how did you overcome those?
Family is a big thing. My wife was pretty not on board for a while, I guess. I leaned on my family. I talked to my dad a lot. He's an Army veteran, by the way. And, but I talked to him quite a bit. And he's like, you just can't make a living doing this in this area. And that just was about it. Jack was kind of in the same boat there. He wasn't sure that it would work in such a small area. And my wife finally just said, give it a try. She said, you got to keep your real job for a year and a half. But that was the biggest thing for us. I had a good job, had a really good job, paid well for this area. But I did want that independence and the freedom to be my own boss. The labor challenges are hard. I mean, that's something you really need to think about in this day and age before you do it. But they can be overcome as well. We're working on overcoming that as we speak. So yes, there are challenges. There's a lot more rewards.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Just walk us through a day in the life of you as a franchise owner of G-Force. So first of all, just for reference, we've alluded to it, but G-Force is a parking lot striping business. So you've got, equipment that goes to a site, right? And maps out the markings. There's a lot of math and geometry involved in that. I assume you've got software for that, but tell us a little bit about some of the inside baseball part of how G-Force, what G-Force does and how they do that work and what your role in that is.
We use Graco machinery. It's we use the latest, greatest technology there is. We use an auto layout, which is almost like having a CAD system for your layout. But you put these numbers in, and then it turns around and it puts the dots down on the ground. It does layout for you, whereas used to in the parking lot striping business, they'd go out there with string lines and they'd have to measure a 9-foot parking stall in 2 different places. and they had to put a string line between them. Well, now we have lasers that do that for us. And so it's a lot more automated, a lot easier than it used to be. You can do a job that used to take 3, 4, 5 people and do it with 2 now. Not ideal. Obviously, I prefer 3. That way, I have 2 people painting and 1 person moving a box for the laser. We start in the morning. If it's a new layout, we get out there, we lay the parking lot out. Once we get it laid out, we're ready to paint any stencils we got. We have shop days where we have to maintain our equipment. Not extremely hard work.
Yep. And you're an owner operator model, which means you're actively involved in the business itself. Are you, and are you actually doing some of the work yourself, or are you kind of managing the business and customers and employees?
I still go out on the bigger jobs and get my machine operated. We don't have people for me just to send a crew out for that. So my intention is small restripes. I'll send my guys out. Anything bigger than that, I go out and I get on the machine and we get it knocked out.
Nice. And how many crews or employees do you have, Rob?
Right now I've got 3. I've got 2 crews, but we kind of operate simultaneously. So my location also does seal coating, which is when you go into the parking lot and you put the liquid sealer on it to protect your investment and make it last longer. So I'm one of the few locations for G-Force that actually does that right now. We do have more coming in and adding it. So we do that. I have a crew for that, and then I have a paint crew.
Nice. What about your typical customer? Is this like strip malls, parking garages? I would assume it's all commercial business, right?
It is all commercial, yeah. We'll get a seal coat job for our driveway occasionally. I try to kind of steer clear of those. I prefer the commercial work. Yes, I do a lot of parking decks. I've got, customers anywhere from pavers to property managers to the individual that owns the building, or the individual that owns a mom and pop shop. So your customer range is anybody that's in a commercial building that has stripes in the lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, what kind of tools does G-Force provide for you to help you do your work? Like, I guess you've got to go out and you've got to bid jobs and you've got to estimate that cost and sort of, things like that. Does G-Force does the franchise provide that sort of, products and services to assist?
Well, they do. We have estimating software that they provide. We have what's called Trainual. Man, we cover any subject you can imagine is covered under our Trainual. So Jeff spends a lot of time working on these Trainuals and getting them so that we can have the most up-to-date training. Somebody runs into a problem and we figure out a way to fix it. He puts a Trainual on there so the rest of the people don't have to do it. So these new franchisees coming in, they go through the Trainual. They've seen all the problems we've had. Plus, then we have a training course, a 3-day, 4 training course. We send them down to Tampa, which is our original owner, our number 1 franchise. And he trains them on our estimating software and the machines, maintenance on the machines, how to stripe, all that stuff.
Yeah. Good stuff. What about the time during the week, Rob? Do you do most of the work during normal working hours, Monday through Friday, or do you have weird hours sometimes?
We have extremely weird hours. And that goes back to your hiring issues, because you do have odd hours. You have hours that most people don't keep. A lot of times you have to be there when a place is closed, because that's the only time the parking lot's empty. Sometimes, now new construction, you can typically get in there during the day and get it knocked out. But restripes, if you go to a Publix grocery store, well, they're busy all day long. You have to do that at night. So Our hours vary. Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're not.
Do you get a lot of repeat business? I mean, how long does a parking lot striping job last? Is it, I guess, a few years and then you're back doing it again, or what?
It depends on how well you take care of it. If you keep it seal coated on a regular basis, you should seal coat that thing every 3 years and stripe it. I've got some that'll do that. They'll have it set up on every 3 years, and then they'll stripe it in between so that they're still looks good. You know, a fast food place, a lot of those owners, especially the smaller franchisees, they're going to keep their place looking really good because, you know, they own 8 or 10 stores and they care about it. My biggest repeat customer is a paving company that uses me for a lot of stuff, and it's not necessarily the same thing over and over, but he uses me for a lot of different things. And
Yeah.
he for seal coating, for striping, sign installation, wheel stop installation, anything they come up with that they don't do, they call me.
Yeah. How did you get your business to start? I'm assuming you got probably a lot of repeat business at this point, but when you're first getting started, how do you market yourself? And does G-Force do some of that for you? Does a lot of that fall on your shoulders? How does the marketing
They do.
for new
They
customers
manage our
work?
website. They manage our Google. We use Google advertisement, and they manage that for us. Or they have a company that manages it for us, and they take good care of us that way. I mean, any kind of marketing stuff, it goes through them. We have the best looking vehicles on the market. All of our stuff is wrapped. I don't know if y'all seen pictures of them, but it's all wrapped. And our logos on there, everything that we do is branded and looks like military stuff. And that helps too. And I had a guy call me one day. I was going down the road and he's like, "Hey, I just passed you. I need you to come to a church for me." So I went to a church for him.
Nice. You gotta love when that happens, right?
Well, you do, yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. That's really good stuff. We're going to get to some questions. So we've got lots of questions from the audience here, and I'll just start throwing some of these out for you. So somebody asked, can I own a franchise but still have a full-time job? And I guess pertaining to you, you mentioned yourself that you in fact did do that, right? You kept your full-time job for a while. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I was there about a year and a half, but it got to a point where there was just not enough hours in the day. And I had a job, you know, I had a lot of leave built up. I'd been there 19 years. So, you know, it was working for the government. So you still leave, you get LES every month. But I had a lot of that built up. So I just used it until I got ready to quit. And I ran it all out while I was working 2 jobs.
Yeah. 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 That's good stuff. You know, the other thing we talk about too with veterans is that for veterans that have a military retirement pension or have a VA disability payment coming in on a monthly basis, or if you've got a spouse that works, that can oftentimes offset some of the loss of income from the time that you quit your job and start your franchise. So that's something that can offset that. That some of those are fairly unique to veterans. There's not a whole lot of companies these days are giving pensions as 401ks, but not pensions, right? So veterans kind of have access to some of those things. It's neat. So somebody asks, and I gather you're going to have a pretty interesting answer to this one. Which franchises would basically run themselves? So not asking you to speak for all franchises that are out there, but does G-Force just push a button and it runs itself, or how's that work?
No, G-Force takes a lot of work. I don't know of anything that you're gonna be able to get into right now. Just push a button and it run itself. Eventually, you know, it might do that. Right now, it does not. It's strictly owner operator. Almost all the owners get out in the field and work. So people have partners, and they'll get out and run the show while they work from home and get the quotes and stuff like that. But for the most part, we all work in the field as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just comment on that question pertaining to franchises outside of G-Force. This is the way I like to answer that question for folks that ask it, because I get it asked, I ask it all the time. You can either put yourself to work or you can put your money to work. So if you want to be a silent investor and you want to just write a big check and have somebody else do all the work in the business, then you can do that. That's called an investor. You can also invest that in the stock market and a variety of other places as well. But if you don't have the capital to do it that way, you're trading your time for income. And that means putting together the business. I think the good news in all of that is that there are options for people that want to operate at different levels. If you want to be an owner operator, roll your sleeves up and jump on the equipment at various times, Rob's a good example of running a business that you're able to do that. if you want to scale it and you want to buy multiple, territories and you want to run a larger enterprise, then you're going to have people that are doing the work. You're probably not going to be doing the work. You're going to have probably layers of managers that are managing those that are doing the work. And so the nice part about franchising is really whatever you want it to be.
And I will say, we've got several that do have multiple locations, several owners.
Okay. Yeah. Good stuff. Somebody asks, how much capital does it take to start a G-Force franchise? So I guess maybe if you want to just speak from your own personal experience there.
So when I started, you got to remember too, prices are not the same now as they were 3.5 years ago. I was looking in the $60,000, $70,000 range. Probably should have been a little bit more to have some working capital, but I did make it work. I was able to get enough jobs that I built the working capital, but the loan itself was 60, 70 plus my expenditures that I put in.
Yeah. Okay, good. All right, Rob, I think that about does it. I'm just got a question to ask you at the end here. What do you love most about owning a G-Force franchise?
Oh man, so we're all veterans and we have a lot of camaraderie still. So we're able to get together and give each other a hard time. We get together once a year and that's a lot of fun to me. But, I enjoy the living that I'm making is a better living than I was making before. It's so it does provide me a little bit more freedom, a little more security for me and my wife. We're able to do a little bit more for our families. So that's a blessing for us. And we really appreciate that.
Yeah, very nice. And I guess the answer to my last question is probably pretty easy, but would you do it all again?
Absolutely.
You would. Okay, good.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, outstanding. And I greatly appreciate you coming and sharing that, your journey path and a day in the life. And I know you've got a lot of work to do. You probably were out doing jobs last night and could probably use a little bit of sleep, but really appreciate you joining us here this afternoon, and best of luck in the future.
Chris, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it. And good luck to y'all going forward. And anybody that wants a franchise, good luck to y'all as well.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Rob. Take care.
All right, bye.
All right, everybody. Hey, we're going to turn it back over to Rachel. She is going to tell us a little bit about if franchising is right for you, kind of what the next steps are before we get into the franchising 101 portion. Rachel.
Thanks, Chris. All right, yeah. So if you guys want to scan this QR code or go over to vetrepreneur.com/step-2. Step 1 is obviously coming to the workshop. Step 2 is connecting with a franchise coach that best fits your needs. So by going to that website, you're going to fill out a little bit of information about where you currently are in your franchising journey. And we will connect you with a coach on our end that is best suited for wherever you currently are in that journey. So like I said, in order to speak with to go ahead and move forward with getting connected with one of our senior coaches, we do require that minimum of 680 credits for $20,000 liquid cash investment. So something to think about, but this is for everyone. So definitely fill out this information to see where you are, and then we will provide you with resources. So this is something just, if you're just getting started and you want to help improving your current situation, this is still for you. So we look forward to working with you guys. All right, back to you, Chris, for boot camp.
All right, taking you guys back to boot camp, back to 101. Here we go. So this is a portion we're going to spend maybe, the next 15 or 20 minutes kind of plowing through some of the basics of franchising. And then again, at the conclusion, we'll have an opportunity again to show that QR code if you're interested in the coaching services. Just by the way, our coaching services are 100% free to veterans. We like to say, listen, if you're going to go through a process like this, our job is to provide you with the education and the support through that whole journey path. So that we can, it can be a pretty daunting process. So having somebody that is neutral, that is able to guide you and steer you through that process. Just makes it a whole lot easier. You can always do a Google search for franchises and veterans and whatever, but really you're going to come up with a lot of options and a lot of people that are going to want to sell you a franchise. Our job is to walk you through a process. We've got access to hundreds and hundreds of franchises, and our job is to really find the one that's best suited for you. It's free, and going direct to a franchisor does not cost you any or it doesn't cost you any more to use a coach. So we always say, why not you take that option? So go ahead and if you want to go ahead and click on that, and we will put you in the queue to get you scheduled to have that initial call. All right, some of the initial stuff. You've heard this before, but it is an absolutely beautiful hybrid somewhere between getting a job and opening your own business from scratch. Like I mentioned before, many veterans have they're willing to put in the long hours that oftentimes owning and operating your own business requires, but they don't have a great idea for a new concept, or maybe, want to open up a painting business, for example, but they recognize that it's, just because I can paint doesn't mean I can operate and own a painting business. So really, this is where that operating that franchise, you're kind of leveraging somebody else's know-how. And it's just a beautiful opportunity to take that concept and implement it within your local geographical region where you're operating that business. So I absolutely love it. I just think it's it's not for everybody, right? There's risk involved, and there's certainly going to be long hours, and there's a financial investment. And it's not, and a lot of responsibility, employees and everything else. So it's certainly not for everybody. In fact, it's not for most people. But if you are interested in it, it is a phenomenal way to get into business ownership. The franchisee is you. So that's when we talk about a franchisee, we're talking about the person who's going to be purchasing a franchise concept and implementing that within their own geographical territory. The franchisor, that's the mothership, right? That's mom and dad. That's the entity that owns and operates the intellectual property and licenses that to you as the franchisee. If you get into this process, we will be putting you in touch with the franchise development person. They work for the franchisor, and we'll get into that process. But those are some basic terms. Next slide. Some of the advantages, again, less risky than a new concept. I can't tell you how many mistakes, because I've started a couple of businesses from scratch, and the number of times that when you're running an original concept or starting a business from scratch, it's not a matter of if you'll make mistakes, it's how many mistakes you'll make and how costly will those be. And because it's just, you're testing every process, you're testing every product, you're constantly in a testing or an experimental phase. Even if you research and learn, have mentors and other things. So you're, leveraging a franchise is really a proven business model for success. We like to talk about this operating model for franchises is very similar to the operating manuals that you can find within, we're very familiar with the military, right? You operate an aircraft or a tank or a ship. There's all kind of operating manuals to operate that at its maximum efficiency, and the same thing with franchising. So you're given, this is how you need to operate it, very similar to what we know in the military, and that's going to minimize your mistakes. And in business world, that means it's going to minimize the amount of money that you lose and maximize the amount of money that you get to keep. So it's really good. You're learning from somebody else's mistakes. In the Navy, we used to say in the NATOPS manual, which is our operating manual for naval aircraft, a lot of those warnings that were in there, that things that could kill you if you didn't do them right, were written in blood, right? Because that did happen. And so, these operating manuals for franchises are written in blood. Like somebody made those mistakes and learned how to do it the right way, and you benefit from that by buying into a franchise. Next slide. In exchange for that, you're going to pay for that, right? So you pay for that acceleration of that business. Part of that payment that you will put out there is called a franchise fee. That is essentially, it's a one-time fee, by the way. You pay that upfront and you'll never have to pay that again. It's usually per territory. That gives you access to all the rights to use, to license and use all the intellectual property, the logos, the brand name. It includes usually administrative setup, training, which can happen, typically happens, it can be either on site or nowadays there's a lot of virtual training that's going on, and they'll train you in every aspect of running that business. It pays for access to things like supply chain, administrative setup, a lot of the stuff that, again, I like to tell. I've taught entrepreneurship classes to lots of veterans. And one of the things that I teach them is when you're starting a business, you want to outsource everything that's not your core competency. So I've seen so many people get hung up with things like, how do I set up the QuickBooks accounts for accounting, and over, spending inordinate amounts of time on negotiating with vendors and people that are going to be able to supply raw materials and things of that nature. Many of those processes and administrative things are set up already through a franchise, and you get to leverage that. But that's what your franchise fees go towards. The other thing is, with veterans, is one of really the only group that has discount. So not all, but many franchises do offer a discount on that franchise fee for veterans. And again, that doesn't really, there's no other group that benefits from those sorts of discounts, just veterans. I think that tells you how much franchises love to bring veterans on as franchisees. They just work, right? They work and they're accustomed to that kind of a model. All right, next slide. The other part that you're going to pay for over time, unlike the franchise fee, royalties and things like ad fees are very common, or marketing fees are throughout the lifetime of your ownership in that franchise concept. So royalties come off of they're typically a percentage of your revenues, and fees can be either a percentage of your revenues or it can be some sort of a fixed amount on a monthly basis in exchange for services that the franchisor is offering. So they're going to vary by the franchise concept that you're looking at, but essentially this pays for all the support that you're getting, coaching and mentorship and services that are provided by the franchisor. Next slide. Okay, a couple of different operating models. So an owner-operator is really where you're actively involved with the business. I think Rob Young at G-Force is a really good example of that. This is most franchises. It's also can be an owner-manager where maybe you're not out there jumping on the equipment, but you're actively involved in managing the individuals who are actually performing the work that delivers on the product or services that the company offers. On the other hand, like the complete opposite end of that would be essentially an investor, also known as an absentee owner or an executive ownership model, where you're going to hire someone. This is typically someone who's high net worth, who's going to buy multiple franchises within a certain region. They might get what's called a master franchise agreement in place. And then they're going to hire someone that's going to, a president and department heads and managers that are going to run that business entirely. And then somewhere in the middle is what's called semi-absentee. There are some of these that exist where you're able to, not maybe on a full-time basis, but you're probably running the business side of things, maybe keeping an eye on the financial performance, but you've got somebody that you're paying to operate the business from an operational perspective. So just keep in mind, like, someone's got to run the business, right? So if it's not you, you need to have the capital to pay someone to actually run the business for you. Okay, next slide. All right, this is a really I love the franchise disclosure document. And the reason I love it is because when you buy a business, typically you have to go out and you have to figure out, do all the due diligence yourself, right? Due diligence is nothing more than research that's involved in looking into purchasing a business and figuring out if that's if that's something that you want to purchase. The beautiful thing about franchising is that it is governed by the Federal Trade Commission. It's a federal agency that requires that the franchisor produce what's called a franchise disclosure document. It contains 23 items that you can see here. One of the cool parts of that is item 19, which is financial performance representations. And that is where you can take a look at usually it's audited information pertaining to the sales or the revenue or the gross income or the net income of some of those franchisees. By the way, franchisors are not allowed to talk, and also franchise consultants and coaches like us, we are not allowed to talk about earnings claims whatsoever. That is against the law. We can, however, talk about something that is in the item 19. So it's insured so that it's there for your protection so that people don't talk about and make earnings claims that aren't substantiated and backed up in a document that's filed with the Federal Trade Commission. So it's there for your protection. On the other hand, franchisees, right? So someone like Rob can at times, if they're willing, talk about some of their individual financial performance. But the franchise disclosure document contains just a wealth of information. You can see some of the stuff in there. Your initial fees, stuff in items 5, 6, and 7, and what do you get in exchange for that? It talks about the trademarks and some of the intellectual property. It talks about the training. It's a fantastic document. It's huge. It can be hundreds of pages long, but it is a one-stop shop for all of the due diligence that you're going to need. Okay, next slide. Okay, yeah, some of the myths around franchising, we've alluded to some of these, but people think, hey, I don't know how many people I tell you say, listen, I love Moe's restaurant or I love Chick-fil-A or McDonald's and I want to open up one of those franchises. And the truth of the matter is franchises exist in every corner that you can think of, from home services to senior care to tutoring services for kids. I mean, there's even a dog walking franchise, right? So if you can think of it, there's probably a franchise for it. And I would say that one of the really big growing areas which is a broad area, but it's called home services. And the reason is because people are just outsourcing more and more than they ever have in years past or generations past. It used to be everybody cut their own grass, everybody made their own home repairs. The house needs painted, you do your own painting. Pool needs clean, you clean your own pool. And nowadays, people are just outsourcing that stuff. We've got more consumers have more disposable income, and they're simply outsourcing a lot of the jobs that they're not provided or that they don't want to do. And so huge growth in home services. But, obviously there's retail, there's obviously restaurants, but just a lot of franchises in really many areas that you've probably never even thought of. And I can tell you that we've put veterans into franchises. Probably the majority of the time is a business that they had never even thought that they would ever get into. And so it's really cool. A lot of folks think it's too expensive. Yeah, if you buy a McDonald's franchise, if you can these days, most of those are resales. Those are going to be in the millions of dollars. But the truth of the matter is, you can get into some franchises for as low as maybe $50,000. That's on the very, very low end. But somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 can get you into a lot of different franchises. So you need that much. So it's all relative in terms of it being too expensive, but there's ways to fund that. We'll get into that. Is it too risky? Yeah, there's risk. Of course, there's risk, right? But I think, that is mitigated in part by the fact that oftentimes you're buying equipment that can be liquidated if you go belly up. And it's also mitigated by the fact that that risk is, isn't as much because you've got a proven business model with this franchise or concept and a lot of support. You don't need experience in the industry and you don't need business experience. They train you to do all that stuff. You need the intangibles that, frankly, I think all of us with military experience and many others, it's not exclusive to veterans, but we are certainly taught that in the military, a lot of those intangibles that translate into success as a franchisee. Next slide. Okay, what's that process look like? It typically about 3 or 4 months. Some of those you're covering right now. If you decide that you want to engage with us, we'll have that initial call. That'll be about 10 minutes long. From there, we have a discovery call where we'll talk about in depth what you're looking to get out of this. We like to look at lifestyle factors, individual personality factors, geographical location that you prefer, and then obviously your financial qualifications all play into that discovery call. We're trying to understand all of that. From there, we get into a franchise options call that can occur within a week, where we'll lay out several different options that franchises that are well suited for looking at your skill set and translating that well. And then we'll set you up with calls with those franchisors. From there, there's an FDD review. Literally by week 2 or 3, we can get into start the financing discussion, and we will refer individuals that can go through that talk very custom with how you can finance your franchise. And then as you get a little bit more into it, you're like, hey, this looks like something I want to get into. You'll have what's called a discovery day. Some franchises call it a meet the team day, where you'll either go in person or virtually, and you'll meet with the leaders of that franchise organization and have an opportunity, last opportunity to really talk with them about to make sure that this is something you want to do. When you go to Discovery Day, you've pretty much made your mind up that you're going to do it. The vast majority of people that go to Discovery Day follow through, sign this franchise agreement, and then are awarded that business and move on and open that business. So all told, I've seen it happen in as quickly as maybe 2 months, but more than likely, you're probably looking at about 3, maybe 4 months time. Next slide. I think this might be Kayla. There we go. I'm happy to introduce my colleague, Kayla Lopez, is going to go over how do we fund it. Go ahead, Kayla, take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Excited to be here, happy to provide you guys with some resources and information, and just kind of go over a little bit of the basics around funding and how you can get those franchises funded. So typically we need about 20 to 25% cash when you go into a franchise, right? The cash would cover things like franchise fees, your working capital requirements, inventory purchases, machinery, anything that you may need to operate the business. You also want to make sure that you are aware of what your minimum net worth is before you get into anything, right? So it's a very important number to know, and a very important number to calculate before you even get started. So your net worth is the value of all of your assets minus the total of all of your debts, right? So to put that in other terms, you take things like your home, your real estate, any estate property that you may have, investments, vehicles, including recreational vehicles, retirement accounts, stocks, bonds, cash, anything that you have like that. And that would be the value of all of your assets. And then you subtract that by your debt. So mortgages, loans, credit cards, anything like that, that would tap into the equity that you have. So very, very important number to know, especially before you start on your journey. All right, next slide, please. All right, so there are some very traditional ways and two ways that most people will fund their businesses. One would be an SBA loan. Second would be a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit, or HELOC. Most people know them as HELOC. Fourth would be an unsecured term loan. And then ROBS, so a rollover from your 401k or your TSP or your 403. So the SBA loans. So it's really important to remember that the bank is who loans the money and the SBA is who's guaranteeing it. So they're two separate entities, right? It's not the bank fully that's doing everything. That's not the SBA that's doing everything. So the SBA is going to connect you with a lender, which is typically going to be a bank. And then the SBA will guarantee that loan. If it defaults, they have a certain percentage of the guarantee so that the bank is willing to take the risk. So roughly you have about 30 to 60 days lead time to get approved. So if you are thinking about starting a franchise or starting a business, it's important to start that process early, because it does take a long time. And just like you would if you were purchasing a home, right? You don't go look at homes if you don't have an offer letter, right? Or not offer letter, the pre-approval letter from the bank. So you want to kind of take that same mindset and make sure that you're prepared. You know what you can get funded for, how much cash you have access to, and also how much you're able to take out on a loan. So typically the interest rates are prime plus 2 to 2.75%. And they may require about 15 to 30% cash injection. A personal guarantee, so something that you can put up that says, and then a minimum of 680 credit score. Now, these are just guidelines. Not all of the banks are the same, and there are different, nuance and different things that you'll experience on the way. This is just to kind of give you a rough idea of what's out there, and to provide you a foundation. So the second was a home equity line of credit, your HELOC. So generally, it's a lower interest rate, and they take from the equity of your home. And third, unsecured. So that is no collateral needed. You have to have an overall very strong financial picture. So that includes, where's your debt? How much cash do you have coming in? So it's a little flexible, and it's going to vary loan by loan and term by term and bank by bank. The rates on those are typically a little higher, and you do have a faster approval time. So with ROBs or your rollovers, so you can borrow money from your retirement accounts to fund your business. And there's no penalty to do that as long as you are rolling that money into a C Corp. So when you're ready to cross that bridge and you've decided what kind of funding options you want to go for, you would want to talk to a professional who is well-rounded in how to get that done efficiently. All right, so there are some non-traditional funding sources out there, and we've created a resource guide for you. That resource guide will contain, veteran business owner resource centers. It'll contain a ton of information on different opportunities that are available out there. They're not going to be main funding streams, but they can help out. And so those are things like governor's funds, SSBCI funds, CAP funds. They're not, again, going to be a primary source of funding, but they will help. And I believe, and we'll provide a link to that guide in the chat for you, and we will send it, I believe, via email for you to download. And I think that is it. So back to you, Chris.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Kayla. Yeah, just a quick review on the franchise coaching services. Again, we provide those services for free. We ultimately will get paid by franchisors, but it doesn't cost you any more or any less to go direct to a franchisor as opposed to using a coach. So we are here to walk you through that process, and would love to help you out with that. I think we've got we're going to take on some questions. Yeah, we're going to do questions now. Here we go. So yeah, if you've got, again, if you want, hit that QR code, or you can go to that URL and you can sign up for coaching. Our team will look at that, and they will send you a link to, I think by Monday or Tuesday of next week, perhaps even tomorrow or over the weekend. After you fill that form out, we'll be able to send you a link that will enable you to go ahead and pick a day and time to talk initially with a coach. So if you're interested, go ahead and hit that. Okay, we're going to get to some Q&A. I'm going to take some questions from the audience here. So someone asks, what if I have a large sum of cash, but I am working on raising my credit because I don't have any credit history? So that is a really good question. If you have a large sum of cash, you may not even need to borrow money to finance business. And if that's the case, your credit score is not that, it's not as important. So I would just say, that's probably the idea there. If you've got, again, all in for most of these franchises, really $50,000 to $100,000 is going to be your all-in cost at the very, very low end. For most of these, it's going to be more closer to $250,000, $300,000 and up. And again, that's the all-in cost, but the portion that you have to provide oftentimes is, generally speaking, 25% or so, and the rest can be financed. Rachel, any other questions that you see that are out there?
Yeah. So I saw one, and it said, if I don't know if I'm ready to actually get into franchising, should I still schedule a meeting with the coach?
Yeah, another great question. I would say, do some thinking about it. If you think that, it's likely that you would want to move forward with something like this, I think a conversation with a coach that takes 10 minutes will start to uncover if that's the right fit for you. Certainly by the time that we have that discovery call, we will find out if franchising, is right for you or not. So I think you should have, if you want to sign up for coaching services, you should be largely inclined to want to pursue this. But if you're still on the fence, you're not unlike most people, right? Everybody is going to have concerns when they get into this. And that's part of our job, is to really talk about those things. Because listen, like I said, oftentimes we're going to tell a veteran that, no, this isn't for you, or it's not for you right now, and here's why. And then if you do want to pursue this, here's some things that you can do to become somebody who's going to be competitive and qualified to really do this and do it the right way. So I would say you need to have a really strong desire to get into it and some basic qualifications. And at that point, it's certainly worth signing up for coaching services, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely do some research. And then if you're sure that it's something that you're at least very interested in, then sign up. We actually are maxed out on chat. So if you're really on the fence, I would say wait and do some more research, and then let some other people get in to the availability. Another question, how long will coaching be available for?
Yeah, well, we're doing it. I mean, it's for the foreseeable future. We're very excited about this. We've been providing coaching services for veterans for since early 2021, and we're very, it's just something that really drives us. It's really rewarding to put veterans to, a company has helped veterans get into employment opportunities and education opportunities in the past. We call this the third E, the entrepreneurship opportunity, and very rewarding. So certainly something we're going to continue doing for quite some time. I think that was the nature of the question. Maybe if I missed that nature of the question, ask again.
I think that's great information so that they know that we're available for the foreseeable future. But I think they might have been also wondering if, how far through the process are we available for coaching?
Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So we walk you through the entire process until you acquire that franchise business. So we are very heavily involved up front as you're in that discovery process, the validation process, engaging with franchisors, and we facilitate those conversations the entire way. We'll connect you with trusted partners that will help with financing. So we're really involved, super hands-on at over the first several weeks and up really kind of probably the first month. And then gradually you start to become connected to the franchisor. And as you start to fine tune exactly which franchise you want to get involved in, their process will take over and you go to discovery day and so forth. But we are there 100% of the way until you acquire that franchise and are awarded it. We're there to support you and help you all the way.
Yeah. And then we hand it off, and then you get the support and training of your franchise. So
that's right.
Yeah. We have had several people ask for a list of the franchise brands that we partner with. Now, I know you mentioned it earlier, there are hundreds and hundreds. So we don't actually give out a list, but I'll let you explain why.
Yeah. So anybody's free to go ahead and do a Google search for veterans for franchising. And like I said, I guarantee you'll have 9,000 phone calls from 9,000 different franchise opportunities. The process that we put you through, the discovery process and the matching process, is a really important component. And we are not tied to any individual franchise. And it is really important to walk through that. What we ultimately get down to through a discovery call, and when we do the presentation of franchise options, we'll typically have anywhere from 5 to 10 options that are suited for you. Again, that's based on lifestyle, personality, financial considerations, and geographical territories. And then from there, we'll usually move on and obviously whittle that down to one in the end. So we've got an access to huge inventory. In our direct inventory. We have access to about 500 to 600 franchise concepts. There's probably another 1,500 that are out there that we can help put you into. So pretty much it's an unlimited inventory of opportunities. We don't provide that list because it's constantly changing, but just know that when we go through the coaching process, that'll be part of the processes. We're looking at all of those and putting you into the franchises that you're best suited for.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, and a follow-up question to that, someone just asked the best way to be fitted by trades would be, or industry, I think you would like to get into. So yeah, just piggybacking on what you just said is we'll ask all the questions that are important and get the feedback of the franchisee candidate. And, you know, it's really a marriage of matching what is best for the company and what's best for the franchisor and the franchisee.
Yep.
All right. We had another veteran ask that, can I, as a veteran, have my sons join me in owning a franchise?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. In fact, a lot of franchises are a family affair. A lot of husband-wife teams, a lot that are, if they're old enough to work, they're involved in the business for sure. And I think it's a great way to teach young people, you know, kids, whatever their age, you know, to get them involved in the family business. So absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of husband and wife partners. And yeah. Another question we had was, does the franchisor provide legal services to the franchisee, or is that something that the franchisee has to figure on their own?
Yeah, another great question. So we highly recommend that you have independent legal counsel. So this is just like any, you know, legal arrangement that you're going to get into. It's really important to have independent legal counsel that's representing you. So certainly the franchisor has legal documents that you'll be looking at. Those are basically the FDD, which is that disclosure document. And the second one is the franchise agreement, which lays out exactly all the terms and conditions on how that relationship between you, the franchisee, and the franchisor is going to work. So we will recommend lawyers, a couple of lawyers to you that will review those with you. They'll usually do that for a package price. It's usually, you know, anywhere from maybe $1,500 to $2,000 or maybe $2,500 tops, where they'll review the FDD for you. And they'll also review the franchise agreement with you and bring to light anything that might pertain to your exact situation. So that's part of the process, absolutely, is that we'll route you and refer you to some lawyers that can do that work. Of course, if you've got a lawyer that you want to use on your side, that's great. I would caution against using a lawyer that isn't highly experienced in franchise law, because it is a unique thing. And but absolutely recommend getting legal counsel in this process. Good news is it's not real expensive in the grand scheme of things. You know, $1,000 or a couple $1,000 of legal costs to get into something that's going to cost you from anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000 is a pretty small portion of that.
All right, thanks. All right, so we are a little bit over time, but I did want to answer 2 more questions. Can you have a partner that is not military connected?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So obviously, you know, 6 out of 7 franchises are owned by non-veterans. So obviously non-veterans can get into franchising, and you know, they love veterans. They love veterans being a part of it. But in terms of, you know, if you want to partner with somebody else who's a non-veteran, by all means, right? I think the franchise fee would apply to, I don't know the technicalities, it might differ, you know, by each franchise concept, but I would say that if you're 50% or more owned by a veteran, you know, then you're probably going to be eligible for those franchise fee discounts that veterans are entitled to.
One, I wanted to do you host these events often?
Twice a month. Yeah, so we've got these events twice a month. They're on Thursdays at noon. We usually do them the first and the third Thursday of every month. So I think the next one will be 2 weeks from today, January 19th. And we'd love to have, you guys on that. And also these are going to be available via recording as well. So good question.
All right. So yes, next step. So find out if franchising is right for you. Go ahead and go to vetrepreneur.com/step-2, the number 2, or you can scan this QR code. We'll leave it up for a few more minutes, but that is all we have for today's workshop. We really appreciate everyone coming by, and we look forward to working with you. Have a good one, everybody.